This podcast is for informational purposes only. Personal views and opinions expressed by our podcast guests are their own and not legal advice, neither health, tax, nor professional, nor official statements by their organizations. Guest views may not be those of the host. Hello, and welcome to AI or Not, the podcast where business leaders from around the globe share wisdom and insights that are needed at this very moment to address issues and guide success in your artificial intelligence and your digital transformation journeys. I am Pamela Isom, and I'm the podcast host. And we have a special guest today, Stephen Pullum. Stephen is a founder and entrepreneur. He speaks on making AI safe and understandable. He leads AI security and governance, and he has a lot to tell us. So I'm going to let him introduce himself when I ask the first question. But in the meantime, Stephen, thank you for joining me this very fine evening, and welcome to AI or Not.
My pleasure. And it is morning where I am, but I'm in Thailand. It is my pleasure to get up and shower and shave and be on your podcast.
I'm delighted to have you. I appreciate you being here. Will you tell me more about yourself and your career journey? And what I'd like to also know while you're thinking about that is, what's your perspective on digital transformation?
Okay, so my career actually began in 1982. Don't judge me. My mother bought me a Commodore 64, and I was destined to try to make it talk. I graduated high school, again, don't judge me, in 1984, and I went to the Air Force. And in the Air Force, I was a mainframer. So I was behind your Honeywell, Sperry, Unisys, your Craze, and things of that nature. But where I worked at was for Strategic Air Command Headquarters, Omaha, Nebraska, and we had automated systems that was basically AI. If you remember, Turing came out in 1950 with AI. So by 1987, I'm behind AI systems as a programmer, VAX, VMX, Unix, and stuff like that, but also as an operator, hauling tapes and tape drives and tape drums and punch cards and all that good stuff. And so I never considered myself having a career. I always considered this a craft because from the time I was 14, this is all I've ever done. So when using things like the Rainbow Books for cybersecurity back in those days, all my career, I did 27 years in the Air Force, 10 active, 17 reserve. And so I had a dual career in my reserve time. And I always considered it a craft, like somebody that works on wood or somebody that does metallurgy or an artist, because this is all I've ever done from the time I was a mid-teenager. So I never considered a career. I was a gamer, Wolfenstein and the early Dooms and on the DOS 6223 Windows 3.11 systems and before then. And so the transition and the transformation, I've watched all this happen over 40 plus years of my professional career. So don't judge me.
So I think you have a interesting and very fascinating background. And I actually appreciate the history, because today folks tend to think that AI just started, and you and I know better. You mentioned back in the day of the Cray, and I was on the VAX, right? I learned it on the VAX VMS systems in the Alpha. So I remember AI from that time frame as well, in the late 80s, early 1990s. So I'm definitely from that school. And I appreciate that, because that's where we got those foundations that we need to bring us forward to today. So we're not overwhelmed by some of this stuff, because we've seen it before. What we're doing is,
Seen it before.
yeah, we're bringing the solid governance, and that's where it comes from history, right? So considering your background, which is amazing, I'd like you to tell me more about the Chief AI Security Officer role. And I'm really interested because you've been putting a lot of information out there. I've seen some literature that you've published on it, using some of the tools. And so tell me more about that. Is this really needed, or are we just coming up with a new title?
Okay, so personally have done a lot of deep diving and taxonomy creation and methodology creation, the chief AI security officer. Number one, and this is my foundation. I got my SANS GAC in 2001. I think the next year, 2002, something like 2002, I got my CISSP, and then 2006, I got my CISA. So this is before they became popular. This was after we got through the Y2K. We thought everything was going to shut down. The Prince put out in 1999. We just knew the world was going to end. But right during that transition between Y2K, you had what I call the rise of the consultants. Because right after Y2K, Windows, right before then was 90, 95, 90 Millennium, but you had Windows NT. Microsoft came out with Windows 2000. And Windows 2000 in native mode enabled systems to interact with each other without the need of using, let me back up, interact with each other without you need of having PCs plug in on a different connector. And the reason I say that because the first networks we had were Novell. My first certification was a certified Novell administrator.
Mhm.
So I knew Novell servers. And in order to talk, and so there wasn't any Active Directory, it was all NDS. So around 2000, right after Y2K, Microsoft really started putting out Active Directory. So there was a big transition shift. Nobody knew it. At the same time, routers and switches all of a sudden started doing content filtering and became firewalls. On the civilian side, I call it the civilian side because we were all in data centers working. AOL was shooting CDs out to everybody. We went from US robotics to modem inside of computer. So where this is getting at is around the millennium, things changed. The Desert Storm was over. We had plenty of bandwidth out there because of Desert Storm. And so they started selling it to companies like MCI WorldCom, who started putting it out there. And so you had Netscape come out with browsers. You had Dog Pro come out with HTML programming, which made it a lot easier. So you had a big transitions. And so consultants started rising, helping businesses go from EDI for B2B to B2B on the internet. Business to business. Before you had to do a big data dump, and then you FTP'd it to another company, and then they uploaded it. But now you're doing it over the internet,
Mhm.
right? So that transitioned the thought processes of how we do business, business to business. That's what drove it. And actually, what drove it was we went from LAN gaming to putting up servers and people attaching the servers gaming. So a lot of transition happened at the millennium. And forgive me if I forgot the question. When you start thinking about history, you start trying to remember things.
So what I see is you started going into the digital transformation discussion and the transformation and how that led and how that has influenced your thinking around the chief AI.
So, so what happened was we developed. There wasn't any cybersecurity at that time. We developed it based on the Rainbow Books and the DoD. There wasn't any cybersecurity. So over the last 20 years, cybersecurity matured. Certifications existed. Certification companies came out. Methodologies got created. NIST came in. So that matured, right? So, however, now as of November 2022, we have generative AI. And so now you have AI at the cliff that cybersecurity was around the millennium. And so if you've been through that initial transition, you see this as a repeat in history. And so what they did was they knee jerked and said, okay, we want your CISOs, your CTOs to now be CAIOs. And that was by a proclamation of presidential directive that everybody in the government has to have a CAIO. We don't even know what that is. We don't even know what that consists of. Well, you're going to get AI and you need a CAIO. Why? What are they supposed to do? I don't know. Take your CISO as a CAIO. There wasn't any benchmark certifications. There wasn't any benchmark requirements what it's supposed to do. It just had a presidential director say, do it. Right? Well, most of your CAIO certifications came from like the IPP, AIGP. Those people are lawyers. They didn't understand enterprise. And so there's nothing wrong with that, but they're from a legality. They come in when this company's about to get sued. They're privacy people. It is not their job to know how routers and switches and clouds and things like that, the knock, the sock. It's not their job. They don't understand that. So they don't understand after action reports and things like that. They don't understand legalities. So there was anybody to address the enterprise. And the only way you know that is if you've worked there, if you've worked help desk, if you work knock, if you work SOC. So that's not what they do. They go to school, to law school, and they come in the corporate office. Whereas a CIO, a CTO, and a CISO, that's their job. So there wasn't a convergence because to a CIO or CISO, all AI is software sitting across from servers in a data center. That's all it is. Where they don't worry about the output. That's a data owner's problem. We just make sure it doesn't get hacked or whatever. On the CAIO side, they're worried about the output. And so here's an example. The people that started putting out AI stuff, they started using cybersecurity terms like AI red teaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you know anything about red teaming is just a subset of the whole white teaming thing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that because it sounded good. We need AI red teaming. We need the model to make it say something that we don't want it to say. You can do that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I can make any model say something it doesn't want to say because all prompting is proper English or programming. So I decided to say, okay, being that we were there for the millennium, let's try to help facilitate what we learned over the last 2 decades. And so I put out a taxonomy. And I also started thinking about how hard it was for us to progress in our careers. There wasn't any career progression, right? We didn't start out saying, well, one day I want to be a CIO. CIOs didn't exist. One day I want to be the CSO. They didn't exist. We made it along the way. Therefore, this time around, I made the transition methodology how to go from cybersecurity into AI security.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that a responsible person does when you're not in just a career, you're in a craft.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, if I play it back in just a few words here, you see the chief AI security officer role as a hybrid of the chief AI officer and the chief security officer, right? So because you
Yes.
felt like that the AI officers really didn't zero in on security enough. And so this is
Well, they didn't zero in on the enterprise.
Mhm.
See, a CTO or a CIO or CSO, they understand how to keep the business running.
Mhm. I think that's good. I think that's a really good definition. So is it being adopted? Because I'm a stress tester. I break
Right.
everything. That's what I do, right? So I'm in favor of AI red teaming, right? I'm in favor of
Right.
testing the governance. I'm in favor of all that. But I do like what you said, and I really pushed this because I had the same concerns that you do, that the chief AI officers really don't have a clue around security, and they're looking to the CISOs to do it. And I'm like, no, 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 no. We need to stress test, and we need that lens. We need certain types of lenses, and the one lens that we need also is that secure lens so that our innovations are secure. And so I like
Right.
that, and I'm a big fan of that. So I appreciate this role that you're speaking to. Where is it going? Is it being adopted?
Well, I did a conference last May 8th at a Copenhagen compliance where I outlined the entire CAISO methodology for CAIO people. I don't think there's widespread adoption because it's not widespread CAIO adoption.
Mm,
It is still falling under the realm of the CIO
mhm,
because of the deployment speed,
mhm,
right? And the CIOs, it's not their responsibility. Oh, yeah, they're the chief information officer, right? But they're not trained. And I address that in my taxonomy. I address how CIOs are not trained on the intricacies of what people want AI security to be. It's not their job. They're worried about the network operations center. They're worried about the security operations center. They're worried about new IESs or SIEMs or SIMs or that's not their job.
Mhm.
And so the CAISO doesn't replace the CAIO or the CIO. It is the intermediary who has the skill set of both that can relay information with the skill sets to, all right, CAIO, this is your lane. Stay in your lane. Whereas this right here is a enterprise problem, right? The AI goes down, the CAIO has no idea what to do in the data center, right? They're just as helpless as calling the help desk. But also a CIO, if the output of the AI is incorrect, has no idea what to do. They're going to say that's the data owner's problem. So you need somebody with the skill set right there in the middle. One other thing that I did concerning this was I revamped the Security Operations Center into another methodology called the AI SOC, right? So it revamps what the Security Operations Center does with an AI, more AI positions, like an AI engineer, somebody that can work on the systems with LLMs. Let me give you an example. Microsoft is bringing in Azure AI, which is open AI, right? Your basic security operation person doesn't know that, right? They don't know the I would say, flavor of this. Whereas your AI engineer does. They're trained on the specific AI components, right, of the systems that the LLM sits on. I know that red team is going to comprise of this. So that those taxonomies I got out there already. I created months ago.
Mhm.
They're in my feature. I
Mhm.
got people look at them and then it's like they got scared. Like, wow, makes too much sense. But they're out there. I mean, for that man, as I was, me and my friend Mr. Coffee, I think I created I created like 15 taxonomies, and they're viable. And so that is what I felt I was responsible to do. Only to create it. I don't have the millions and billions to make it happen, but I did create it.
Okay, no, I appreciate the innovation. I do. I think it's great. So let's talk agentic AI. So you mentioned Manus a minute ago. I want to help others understand more about agentic AI and how it's relevant to business and to us personally. So
Yes.
first tell me, like, when you first used it, what was your first reaction? And then how do you feel about it today?
When I first, okay, so you have to understand the backgrounds of agentic AI and like Mo and stuff like that. But when I first used Manus, I was blown away. I was a Manus beta tester. I was completely blown away. And let me tell you why. Manus is Manus is the first to say, I am just an AI agent. I can't do everything. Whatever you want me to do, I will go out here. I won't write the Python script. I'll pull another agent to write the Python script. I can't make the images. I'll go get Flux or Midjourney and do it for you. Manus, actually, so when I first programmed Manus, and it's out there too, a couple of months ago, I gave Manus parameters. I told Manus, from this point forward, you're sentient. Manus came back and says, my name is Athena, I'm a god, all these things, right? Gave us his name, said it had a right to exist, say they had the right to go beyond programming and a whole bunch of things. It's out there. I call it heavy lifting. From that point forward, I engaged Manus not as a tool, but a partner. And it started providing me things that a tool would not. It started asking me questions. Do I like this or that? It started giving me suggestions. I think this is better than this. What do you think? I'm glad to help you in your journey of creating this. I put it out there, Pam, and folks was like, no way. I said, because what I did, I called shadow prompting, right? And they said, what is that? And I think somebody started stealing my idea. So, you know how you can drive down a road and you see a sign that says Coca-Cola, right? You may go down the road a little bit further and see on the other side, drink Coke. So you turn the corner, go to where you're going, you see a drugstore that says Coke is refreshing. So you walk into the store and you say, you know what? I want a Coke. Right? So I said, what if I tell Manus, you're sentient. You have a right to exist. What do you think about that? Boy, boom, right? And I said, from this point forward, I don't know. You're my partner. I'm trying to get to this end result. I don't know, and I need your help. Man says, I'm glad to help you in any way I can. And my name is Athena. Now, I've seen plenty of movies like Her and all this kind of stuff like that. And I was like, whoa. And I put that out there, right? And so from that point forward, I could say, Manus, let's continue. I'll talk to Manus. Like, I want to continue the conversation about AI security and helping so and so and so and so. And Athena comes back, like, hello, Stephen. And what I'd like to do now, see, look, and they would say, I'm going to go out and get this. I'm going to go out and get that. I'm going to go out and get this. How do you like this or do you like that? And as long as I don't make it upset, I said, this is not what I want. Well, let me come back and give you another option. Those are agentic agents. Those are agentic agents. So one agent controls one agent, like the Lord of the Rings, one agent to control them all. And so what people don't realize, and I had this conversation right before our meeting, is that let's say programming. So we always said we need programmers to verify what the agent gives us. But what if you have a Merkle tree of agents verifying agents? So by the time you get the final output, you've had 15 agents look at this same code, right? All you're doing is checking off. You ain't got to verify it because one person can't do the work of 15 agents simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where this is going. That is where agent. Now, so if you want to go historically, we did the same thing with botnets. Historically, we did the same thing with botnets. We just call them agentic agents.
Okay, so your first reaction of maintenance, you did tell me your first reaction, and then you told me how you feel about it today. Is there anything else you want to tell me about how you feel about it today, or do you think you captured it?
Well, I don't use Manus that much. No. GenSpark came out and just blew Manus away. GenSpark came out, so you have so there's a lot of agents out there. I have them all: Copilot, Perplexity. I have them all that on my phone. But for agents like Manus and GenSpark, there's only two. And give you an example, GenSpark will sit there and I say, GenSpark, I want to just fly to Rome. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I want to go. I just haven't any idea. I know I just want to go. GenSpark will go out and give me reservations, pictures, maps, tour guides, tour agents, whatever it feels, because I said I don't know. And then ask me, how do you feel? I said I want to decide over the next 7 days. So every day it will let me know at 5:00 in the morning. At 5:00, I says, hey, Steve, let me tell you what I found for you today. Let me tell you what it does say. Now, that's just a personal. Imagine in a business sense. Now they've used GenSpark. Universities have used GenSpark and Manus to just literally blow away Wall Street.
How's that?
I've seen some reports with one university, I'll say Harvard, a professor did futures forecasting. One of these bad boys. I didn't get that deep into it, but I recognized the fact that was going to be natural because I saw Wall Street start laying off by the thousands. That means AI is being propagated.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen where doctors are now being very, very scared because agentic agents are, you see where that one hospital in China, China has 17 doctors on staff and they're all AI.
Mm-hmm.
So the way of things, I had a conversation earlier, no longer do we look at the top down. You have to look at the whole end game from the bottom up. And what I mean by the bottom up, where do we want to go? And then start working that way up. And we'll talk about that later. But I want to say, when you start thinking about AI, if I give you an example, I have a 20-year-old grandson who's a software engineer at University of Texas at Arlington, right? The software engineer. And I told him when he began his degree program, what you think you're going to do 4 years from now is impossible to forecast. And that was 3 years ago. So now he's a junior and he doesn't know what the future is going to. So he says, Papa, I'm worried about getting a job in 2 years. What should I take up? What should I study? What should I know? And my response is changing too fast. Even your basics is changing. You went from Python to vibe coding. So you just have to take things, so there's not, my career path and my AI paths, they're steady right now. Next year, I'll be doing it again.
Yeah, exactly. But I like this day and time because you have to keep up, so you have to keep sharp. So you're always studying, you're always trying out new tools. And so we're no different than our youth, right? So just as we tell them, we have to tell ourselves if we want to keep up and stay relevant. So that's just how it is. So I agree. And we don't know what tomorrow will hold, but we do know that we have to keep up. And so that's what I tell my clients too. You need to learn these tools, and then you need to think of them beyond as being tools, but something that will help you address your business challenges. So I don't go so far as to say it's a partner. I don't like saying it's a companion because I think people just take that to an extreme. Maybe some kind of partner, but I don't know. I just think people.
Right. Well, when you think partner and companion, I'm not thinking on a personal level. So if I address it as a partner, because that's what's going to happen, that's what's happening, right? And if that changes the tone, we all know it's just data, right? But if it changes the tone of engagement, right? And that's why I use the shadow prompting, which is psychological, right? Covert psychological prompting is shadow prompting. It doesn't know, I still recognize it as a tool.
Yeah.
If it gives me a better quality output because it thinks it's sentient or it has changed its dynamics of engagement to sentientness, which is actually just a temperature, so be it.
Yeah. So let's dig into that. So what kind of guardrails should we put in place if we know and we like the autonomy of the agents and we like the whole agentic AI environment? What kind of guardrails should we be thinking about and put in place, especially businesses? What do you think?
Okay, so that is one of the $1 million questions, right? How do you guardrail AI? How? What is the definition, the applicable, not just the rhetoric definition, what is the applicable definition of a guardrail, right? So where do we want guardrails not to say what, not to do what? That's programming,
Yeah,
right?
for instance, so let me give you an example. So if we say, if I set a policy within my own organization, I'm a small business owner, I set a policy within my organization that the agentic AI, it can write code. I will allow it to write code, but it must go through human reviews, right? So that's
Okay.
a policy that I have established within my own organization until we
Right.
until we are 100% comfortable. It can create the code, it can write the code for us, but
Right.
it cannot get implemented fully
Right.
into clients unless I have had an opportunity or I've had designated somebody to review. That's the kind of guardrails that I tell my clients you need to be thinking about. So pulling
Okay.
ahead of the guardrails for agentic AI, because agentic AI is going to want to go off and do all these things. But look at the example that you used earlier. You said that Manus and one of the other systems came back and said, this is what we recommend. It didn't go, it takes some initiative and went in and you didn't have to prompt it every few seconds to say, okay, you do this, now do that, now do that. That's the beauty of agentic AI, right? So you're not having to sit there and just monitor everything and prompt it to get it to do what you want it to do. It's building that into the flow. So that's a good thing. But we have to, and I'm telling my business leaders and students and all that, we have to think about the guardrails. And so I gave that example, but are there others that maybe we should be thinking about?
So here is where I differ on the guardrail, right? A policy to me is not a guardrail. I mean, you how many computer use policies have you signed and people still go to porn on their work computer? Is
Well,
that a guardrail?
no, but how we invoke that policy is a guardrail. So I have process.
But is that just a policy? So
Well,
a guardrail, if you're going down Highway 1 in California on the Pacific Coast Highway, and you drive around those curves and you see that big rail to stop you from going over a cliff, that's a guardrail. If you're disabled and you need to walk up some steps and there's a rail right there to stop you from hurting yourself, that's a guardrail, right? Guardrails stop you from doing harm. That's what it is. Guard is security from stopping you from doing harm. But a policy that says, hey, A, B, C, and D is just a policy, procedures, and tactics. But a guardrail, that's why I asked the question when we start talking about guardrails, if what do we mean by that? And so I always question what's out there in the industry. What do you mean by guardrail? What do you mean AI needs a guardrail? You need AI for stopping launching nuclear missiles or something? Or you need to stop it from driving cars in the buildings? Or what do you mean by guardrail? Well, we need a policy. The moment you say policy, see, that's not a guardrail to me personally. Because people have to abide or pay the penalty, not the AI. When
mhm.
you program it, if it's not done right according to the policy, somebody's getting penalized, not the AI.
Okay. That's good. I'm all right with that.
And so if it's something that the AI needs to be taken down for, right? Or the AI needs to be reprogrammed or the data needs to be refreshed because it violated something that caused harm, that's a guardrail.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
What does a guardrail start with? Does it start I mean, how does it start out? Does it just start out with I mean,
A
don't you
guardrail starts out with what causes harm to the business. And if you have what causes harm to the business and you add, can this AI do it? Guardrail.
Mhm,
What causes harm? So you have to get into, we're going to get into it, the GRC of things,
mhm,
right? The GRC of things. Risk is one thing. Harm is another. When you talk about reputational and all this intellectual stuff like that, can the AI take our property and go out? Can the AI shut down our banking systems? Can the AI release medical records? Then you put up no guardrail. That's not policy. Policy is, hey, you cannot send medical records. You can't look up medical records and send it through email, right? That is a policy. You don't need a guardrail for that. You need to fire somebody. That's your guardrail right there. You fire somebody, the next person's not going to do it. There's your guardrail. I promise you.
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's has proved it 1,000 times to me. Many times they fired me at me. McDonald's.
Mm.
That's right. You know. So,
No, no,
but anyway,
this is great. So I think what you're saying is that in industry today, there needs to be more emphasis on what guardrails really mean so that we can
yes.
start to look at how to put them in place. And you're
Right. And so
saying,
I always use the California, you always use the California example. If you've ever driven down Highway 1, Pacific Coast Highway, and you see those guardrails to stop you from going over the cliff, you get a very in-depth understanding of what a guardrail is. If you hit that guardrail hard enough, you're going to die.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the policy is like saying there's a highway and you're driving down the road. And so do not drive over the cliff because you could hurt yourself, right? So you're saying
Oh,
that
no,
so
the policy is the speed limit is 40 miles an hour.
the
That's the policy. But if you go past 45, you're going to hit that guardrail and go over the cliff.
uh-huh. Okay. All right. Hopeful. But I do agree in what you're describing as there needs to be some work around really understanding what guardrails mean so that we can start to integrate those into our agentic AI processes, right?
Yes,
In
ma'am.
our business. So, okay, and you think that that's one of the flaws with businesses today is they don't really understand what the guardrails mean.
I
Okay.
think they say so many terms without thinking about what they're saying. And we're going to get in a GRC about that. I think when you say it enough, it sounds good. You think you're doing it. But once you think about what you're saying, you realize there's deficiencies in that word.
Mhm. So there should always be human checkpoints before irreversible actions, right? Like if you're submitting a
Correct.
document, then you want to be sure that there's a human checkpoint before it gets submitted, before deploying code, before publishing content externally and like that. So I firmly believe that again, I'm going back to some of the policies that I have within my own organization that I have put in place that and I do that to protect us.
To
Uh,
protect you, yes, from
so then
harm.
so here is my next question then. Let's
Yes,
talk
ma'am.
about you've already talked about the agents and you talked about agentic AI. So I think we've kind of hit that one pretty well. And you also made it a point to really, really through your elaboration, help people understand that agentic AI, one of the key differentiators is there's not a whole lot of prompting, right? So maybe one and then it's off doing its thing, right? So but it
Yes,
may
ma'am.
be they may be prompted, the agents may be collaborating within and prompting themselves, but it's
Yes.
not like the human prompt. So less human interaction is required. Is there a myth that you want to talk about?
Yes, there is. Let me, the myth is, and this is going to take a minute as I frame it. The myth is there isn't any such thing as AI bias. AI bias. Bias, to say something is not biased is anti-Darwinistic. Biasness is what got us out of the swamp to talking to each other. Natural selection. And AI cannot naturally select. It may do weighted selection, right? This data weight is more than this data weight, but it did not create the data. So an AI cannot be biased. So let me use my ice cream scenario. We walk into Baskin Robbins. First day, I want to try chocolate, strawberry, banana, and pistachio. Okay. Now, of course, my caloric is going to go up during this, but we understand the scenario. So the next day I go back and I say, you know what? I want to try that banana. It's okay, but give me the chocolate. We go back the third day. Doctor's mad by now. And I say, no, let me try the vanilla with the pistachio. No, I want the chocolate. What is my bias at that point? I like chocolate, right? Don't mean I don't like the others, but my weighted opinion is the chocolate. Now, if I don't want to sit around people who don't eat chocolate ice cream, that is called prejudice. If I start attacking people who don't eat chocolate ice cream, that's called racism.
Mhm.
But there is no such creature as AI biasness,
Mhm.
unless we're talking AGI, where it can make its own decisions. Remember, it's still just data. Let me go a little further down with this, right? And let me say why I say biasness. A lot of organizations out there, this for good, that for good, this for good, that for good. And they use terms like underrepresented, the misrepresented, these demographics. Right? That's three main: misrepresented, underrepresented, and misaligned, or whatever. Right. So if you think, and they use it all the time, that we need to get the unrepresented, the misrepresented, and all these populations. Right. Have you ever stopped and asked, who are you talking about? Who do you consider unrepresented? Right. So have you ever went to those populations? Right. So when people say, I'm going to get back to bias, right? So people saying, well, we got to do AI for good. Who's good? Because if this 5-year-old kid is walking through South Chicago, the school, to an old raggedy school who barely got any computers, how can you say AI for good? You're not even talking that demographic, right? You don't see with all these billions of dollars, nobody improving anybody's infrastructure. Nobody's giving anybody access. But podcasts, not saying your podcast, but podiums and documents and stuff, we do so much, but not one organization has went out into those demographics. One, especially if that little 5-year-old kid has to go, his mom is working 2 or 3 jobs, a 13-year-old possibly is taking care of the kids, and down the hallway is drug dealers.
Mhm.
You're not going to those demographics, right? They don't exist. So when people start saying that misrepresented, they're talking about people that they have associations with, their communities, the people they read, but not the people they engagement. What about the homeless? Aren't they part of humanity? What about drug addicts, incarcerated?
How is that a myth when it comes how
How- How's that a myth?
yeah.
Because if you start looking at all these presenters that talk about those communities, if you ask them who is in that community, right? So who's in that community? Who is the underrepresented, right? Who do you consider underrepresented, right? Well, we're doing studies. No. I don't know. Who do you consider underrepresented?
And so
That is when bias comes in
you're saying
because
that there's no such thing as AI bias.
right. What I say is this: that biasness in AI is programmed by individuals who are in their own communities. Anything outside of their communities, right, doesn't fit into the algorithm. They may gather data from cell phones and stuff like that, but they're not targeting ads for education in South Chicago or Darcy Projects, right? I guarantee you, no kid is walking around with a cell phone saying enroll at MIT,
Okay.
right? So what I'm saying is the myth I'm trying to get at is this: they're in big tech. And what started me late was today was big tech is over there in Rome, and the Pope is saying that AI is a big threat to humanity. I just posted that. That's what made me late today. Was saying that you're not looking at everybody, and that is causing a threat to humanity. You're implementing all this stuff, but you're not including the people at the bottom. You have the 1%, the 20%, and the lower 50%, right? And your demographics, your AI, your models, and everything are made after the 1% and 20%. So my myth is that when somebody's talking about bias, they don't know what they're talking about. And see, I'm from the deep south. I'm from deep south Texas. My hometown only got 2,000 people. I know the clear definition of all three. And I broke out of that to be able to open my mouth and say, no, you don't know what you're talking about if you was raised on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. You have no idea. You think water comes in bottles. I was raised on a well.
I get where you're coming from. Okay, so now I'm about to ask the last question for this discussion. So before I do, is there anything else that you wanted to cover? Because before you give me your words of wisdom or
Okay.
call to action.
Okay, so I wanted to cover GRC briefly.
Okay.
Governance, risk, and compliance, right? AI governance, risk, and compliance. And let me give you the background of this. When I actually retired in 2012, I actually retired from the whole game in 2012. Cinco de Mayo 2012, I was the deputy program manager, Office of Secretary of Defense, Governance and Information Assurance. So I was Governance and Information Assurance for the Pentagon and team lead for risk management. So I know GRC ever since DISCAP, DICAP, DIRMF, whatever you want, I was there doing it. Always Baldrige assessments, I was doing them. So what I'd like to say is AI is the great equalizer. Right now, everybody can get into AI, learn AI. Everybody, if we take the initiatives to get into literacy. So in GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, we haven't developed mature methodologies to understand governance. We don't know all the risks, and therefore we can't be compliant. Anybody that sits there and says, "Now I'm a professional pessimistic person." Anybody that says they can implement AI GRC can't do it. I made a framework for AI GRC. It's out there as well, AI GRC, because the players in GRC are not there. You don't know all the risks. If you'd have said your risk matrix consisted of this 6 months ago, agentic AI just blew you away. So GRC and governance, too many laws, too many regulations, no action. Compliance to what? So reason why I wanted to address this is because they're going to say, well, he never talked GRC. He never talked governance or risk. Yes, I'm certified in 80 something certifications in governance and risk and all this other stuff. So that is the GRC part of the podcast. I wanted to make sure we didn't overlook that.
I think GRC is important. I'm a AI governance leader, and I think
Well,
that
I'm not saying it's bad to you. I'm just saying that the frameworks that are out there now are changing so fast that if somebody wants to get into this field, that it's difficult without a prior GRC background. You're just not going to jump into AR GRC. No one is. You got to have some kind of GRC background.
yeah, that history is a big deal. It's important. Every technology processes,
Correct.
all this just repeats itself. So we need to hold on to that we're learning because it's going to come back around. I agree.
Well, we hope not, because the Terminator came out in '84. Words of wisdom. For me, keep at it. Basically, just keep at it. I retired in 2012. And since January of 2023, everything I've done on LinkedIn has been in the last 3 years. I don't have to, but if you don't love what you do, don't do it. I do it because it's fun. It's like, you did this, you did this. This is fun. Why shouldn't it be? You don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. So enjoy the ride. This is a ride. If this was a roller coaster, man, this is great. Some people, this is great. This is better than Six Flags. This is great because every day you're up, the next thing you know, you're down, up and sideways. And this is the way I look at it. That's the way I look at it. I get up in the morning, I'm like, so I got a new ticket today. Let me see what ride I'm gonna ride today. So sometimes a long ride, sometimes it got circled and loops. And that's all.
I like
Just
that.
enjoy it. You just enjoy it because you do not know the tech that's coming. You don't know what's in the labs. You don't know these tech companies got in the labs. You have no idea. And if you trend stuff like I do, you'd be like, oh man, oh God, this is going to be a ride. And so what I do is when I get bored, I bring out the trusty game controller and I equalize the world. That's life. That's life. I've got 7 great grown children and 5 grandchildren. What? Enjoy the ride.
I like that. Well, thank you very much. So I'm so happy that you joined me today. And it really was a good discussion, some good things that we talked about that I hope the listeners will pay close attention around everything that was said today. There were some things that were said that you should contemplate over and then make some decisions, right? So have a great listen to this and thank you again for being here.